an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 90 and 91. Is that right? I think that's right, Yeah. Only 2 this time. And the thing with the cherry blossoms, it kind of happens, but not really. And it's treated as a victory, but I don't know how much that makes sense. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Bernadette for commissioning this episode. So, guys, I have a couple of things to talk about here that I found out outside. First of all, I want to mention off the top, Gabriella sent me the breakdown for how people want me to watch these. So it was 90, 91 for this one. And then it will be 2 for the next 2 episodes, 92, 93 for the next one, 94, 95 for that one. After that I haven't been sent that information yet, and that's fine. But I just wanted, in case people are watching along, to let people know ahead of time. I got an email from Ryan, and this was really helpful, actually. And I feel like Ryan might have emailed me about something else. But he says, one of the versions of the pilot chapter in manga had the Luffy character describing how there are 2 different types of pirates. One are the evil, who go around robbing innocent people and doing the kinds of things that pirates actually did in real life. And the other type are good pirates who just want freedom and adventure, and who hate the evil pirates and will fight them when they come across them. For whatever reason, this explicit distinction was left out of the final version of One Piece, but I feel like it's still coloring Oda's interpretation of pirates. The ones like Luffy and Shanks who are more adventurers are the real pirates, and the evil ones like Don Krieg or Captain Kuro are the dishonorable fake pirates. So I found that very helpful. Thank you, Ryan. Ryan apologizes for the wall of text. That was by no means a wall of text, Ryan. That was very informative. And yeah, I don't really understand why that wasn't included either. I find that sort of interesting that they just decided, it doesn't sound like that would be a difficult thing to include, and it would sort of help with that. It's not even like a translation thing. It's just the author's specific interpretation and reassignment of what words mean, which is pretty important. And I feel like it's not including that is just a weird choice. But it's good to know. And the other thing I wanted to mention is at the end of this episode, when the whole thing winds up happening with the, quote, cherry blossoms, I was sure that I was misunderstanding, because I was like, everybody's acting like this is the actual fulfillment of this guy's life's work, but it's not at all. Am I missing something? Is this supposed to do something more in the future? Or so I Googled the doctor's name and cherry blossoms, Hiruluk, and I found a wiki, I guess. And I took a bit of a risk, but because the character is dead, I felt like it was probably pretty safe. And I just went and checked, and I was wanting to see, is there something that I missed this episode? And at the bottom of the wiki, I did not miss anything, by the way, there is a section about problems with the dubs. Specifically, the 4 kids was the only one listed. And guys, it is a delight. I cannot believe some of the changes that they made. I wish that I had kept this page up, but one of the biggest things was definitely editing out that he was even carrying a bomb at one point, or the fact that he exploded. Here it is. I pulled it up here. Hero Luke's last words were modified in the 4Kids Entertainment dub. In the Japanese version, his last words are, "Oh, what a great life I've had. Thank you, Chopper." This was changed to, "I am a doctor," in the 4Kids dub. It's becoming increasingly clear why people were worried about the dub. Why would you change that? Is it supposed to be that they don't even want to hint at the fact that he killed himself? I guess. It just feels, and they get rid of the fact that he like explodes, and so his hat falls to the ground with no explanation, as if to say that he just dropped dead after saying, "I am a doctor," which is hilarious. I wish it were safe to go to every wiki for every episode and find out what the changes were made for the 4Kids one, because that sounds like a nightmare and I really, really want to watch it. I wish it was like, it might still be available somewhere, and oh God. Bernadette is saying, see, I mean, I understand, like, you guys were all saying that it was the original translation that was really bad. So I believed you, but it's just like, there are changes that you make to make something just straight up more kids friendly. And there are changes that are sort of inexplicable that I'm like, does that make it more kids friendly? I mean, does it? I don't, Florian says, you have the better dub, luckily. By the way, I also have no problems if you watch it dubbed. Oh, yeah, because Florian, you weren't here last episode, were you? So thank you. And Bernadette says, in the 4Kids Club, they even censored Sanji smoking to him eating lollipops. Somebody had mentioned that. And actually, Owen hasn't really watched much of this show, but he was there when Friends had it on, and Sanji was his favorite character. And he only saw it with subtitles. And then he came over where somebody had the dub on and he had lollipops, and Owen was like so disgusted, and that like stuck with him forever. Sanji is also given a Brooklyn accent, says Roy. Oh, God. It never even occurred to me that if you have characters with people who speak English, you can still give them wildly different accents. And why wouldn't you sometimes, like, just for the shit of it? Because I'm certain that some of these characters have different Japanese accents. I can't pick that up since I don't speak the language, but I bet that's in there, right? That is hilarious. I am just loving these details about how all of this works. You guys know how much I love logistics anyway. And because the show is already fucking crazy town banana pants, the addition of weird choices in these respects just adds this like surrealistic layer over everything that you're like, we didn't need to take it this far. It's already too much, but all right, I guess we're doing this, So anyway, all right, I'm backing it up and we are going to talk about this episode itself. So it starts off with the focus in again on the skull and crossbones with the little heart-shaped cherry blossoms, which is honestly adorable. And the doctor talking about how he is going to eventually get these cherry blossom trees to blossom if it's the last thing I do, essentially. And Chopper is sitting there just sort of thinking about what this man was trying to do, wondering if it will ever happen. And this is a weird bit because, like, guys, you can tell me if I'm right about this. It feels like this was part of the effort to really stretch things out. Just having Luffy chasing Chopper for what feels like 3 full episodes now. It's taken up so much time. And it's so tedious because we know Chopper's going to join up with Luffy. I mean, there was just no doubt in my mind whatsoever, if only because we need a party with a healer and we don't have one yet. So it just felt like a foregone conclusion. So having to sit through Chopper being chased down and convinced I was like, even the convincing I can deal with, because I can understand Chopper having his own mixed feelings on joining them. But the chasing down, physically running after him, it's too much. There's too much of it. Roy says, I sometimes enjoy characters giving accents in the case of the characters originally having some kind of accent in Japanese. My favorite is that of turning Osakan characters into Southerners with a thick drawl. Okay. Bernadette says they absolutely do have different dialects. In Japanese, there are various levels of formal speech you can use. Luffy, for example, speaks a very basic version, which is actually quite direct meaning rude versions of Japanese. That makes total sense. Yeah, that completely fits. That's fun. This sort of stuff is fascinating. Like, I find it much more fascinating in a sociological way than a linguistics way, if that makes sense. A lot of people are very into, like, etymology, and that doesn't quite get me the same way as, like, the societal reasons that things are the way they are. I just, it's wild. So Chopper, we have, like, Luffy continuing to chase him and try and convince him to join up. Eventually, Chopper is convinced. He tries to say at first, basically, I'm not a human being. I am not one of you guys. I don't fit in at all. Don't you get that I'm, like, a fucking freak? And this is going to be too weird, and y'all aren't going to see me as, like, a peer, is basically the subtext of it. I'm a monster, and there's no possible way that you guys see me as anything other than a monster. And it's just so tragic, because of course we see him as something other than a monster, but it does make total sense why he doesn't get that. And that's what makes what happens later with Dr. Kureha so upsetting. Guys, what is it with these characters deciding that tough love is the way to handle someone who has already gone through acute rejection, abandonment, and trauma? Like, I understand Dr. Kureha not liking goodbyes, but actually, like, basically breaking down all of his confidence and telling him he's absolutely ridiculous for wanting to do this for all the reasons that he almost said no anyway is a truly baffling choice. And it's why, like, eventually Chopper understands that she wanted him to go because she packed his medical bag and put it in the sleigh for him. So at the very least, there is a moment that we get where Chopper suddenly realizes that she didn't mean any of the things that she said. However, if you have been on the receiving end of somebody saying awful shit to you, especially when it's things you've thought of yourself, coming out of the mouth of somebody that you love and respect, even if afterward they tell you they didn't mean any of that, it is a very hard thing to unhear. Like, you can't. And though, like, it just, even knowing, like, it's one thing to say it in anger and then be like, oh, I didn't really mean it, I was just upset. She genuinely didn't mean it and was, like, acting the whole time, which I suppose helps a little bit, but it just feels so unnecessary. Like, why are we doing this? Why can't we have anybody who tells Chopper, yeah, you can do this, buddy. Look at how far you've come already. The only thing that we've got is Luffy basically being like, I don't care that you're a reindeer. You're rad. Come with us. And that's not the same thing as, like, you are capable. You're smart. You have learned things that plenty of actual human adults don't know. So, and, like, later on, once Chopper is actually on the ship, it turns out, like, Luffy didn't even know Chopper was a doctor. Nobody knew, evidently, except for, I think only Nami knew, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just, everybody just kind of was like, yeah, all right, he can join up with us just because Luffy desperately wants him to join. But nobody was particularly invested because of Chopper and his abilities and what he would bring to the team. So I would love if somebody had felt like, okay, we're going to talk to him about how he's going to bring something special to this group of people who would be pretty vulnerable otherwise. Like, they had to come to this island for help because they had nowhere else to go when Nami got sick. So it's a big deal what he's doing, you know? And yet there isn't anybody. Everybody just seems like so shitty to him. I don't understand the reason for this. It's just, again, that like there's an idea of the tough love that I think it's supposed to be just, oh, she is unable to show how much she cares on the surface. But there's a difference between being sort of remote and aloof and being outright insulting. And she's literally like chucking weapons at him and chasing him out, making him think that she's going to hurt him. Ew, you know? Roy says not a fan of that either. Florian says maybe she wanted to make sure that he really goes, but also not a fan. Roy says Chopper definitely needs some positive reinforcement. Florian says Nami and Sanji, they heard the story. Oh, right, Sanji too. Thank you, Florian. So, yeah, and that was my thought as well, Florian, was that like maybe she was worried he was going to change his mind all of a sudden. But again, I think her telling him that she believes that he can do this would have accomplished much more than literally chasing him out by throwing axes at him. So it's just a sort of odd. I feel like as a general sort of conceit in a lot of fiction, we have sort of fetishized tough love into something that, like, we act as if, oh yeah, well, in the end it was good for you though. You know, it almost always is treated as if it was actually helpful. And there are so many people who have low-key, like, almost superpowers because they had a literally psychotic parent who, like, forced them to learn skills that they otherwise, like, no normal child would learn. I have just been watching the first season of Psych, and this is a major theme in that. His dad's a cop, makes him, like, learn how to observe in this extreme way that is not normal, and does so with this attitude of complete, like, underwhelm every time the kid absolutely nails every question he's asked. And just makes him desperate for his father's approval for the rest of his life. And I am like, it's sort of always done as if, well, but see, now he's amazing at observing and actually out here, like, helping people. So maybe it was all worth it. And I'm like, was it? Was it? I mean, maybe. Or maybe he could have been half as good at observing, but had a, like, much more normal childhood and been a more balanced person and still could have helped solve a lot of murders. Perhaps. I'm just saying. So this sort of thing it comes up a lot. I did appreciate in Daredevil, like, Stick, who is the sort of mentor that teaches him how to fight. Matt Murdock does not like that guy and is a real, like, what the fuck are you doing here when this dude rolls in? And that spoke to me, you know? It's a weird place to be. It's like, well, I turned you into something, like, impressive and amazing, and I don't care that you absolutely fucking hate me. And I'm like, don't you? That's kind of weird. So anyway, yeah, exactly. Roy says it reminds me uncomfortably of the excuses abusive parents use to absolve them of their behavior. Exactly. I just think if you have to resort to this sort of thing, you're either not a very good parent or not, like, persuasive or good at communication, or you are trying to enforce a type of behavior that's abnormal and your expectation is bizarre and unfair. So, you know, yeah, it's just a frustrating thing. Florian says there's a character named Stick. Yeah. I think it specifically said that it's not his real name, but that's all he told Matt to call him. 'Cause he's like somebody who's very shady. So, but yeah, first season of Daredevil, very fun. Second season, all right. So I have to move forward. So we also have this whole thing with, oh God, guys, what is his name? The dude that was like working for Bad King, but then realized, I keep wanting to say Daji or like Dagon. What the fuck is it? But I am a bit let down by what's going on with him, and I'm hoping that by the time we get in, like further on, Dalton, thank you, Florian. I'm really hoping that the whole, it turns out that like Luffy is a wanted man. Maybe this will mean that Dalton returns to the story again, because I feel like there's a lot of potential with Dalton and the like type of person he is, but he just kind of wound up being a little bit boring and weighed things down a little bit. I understand the necessity of having him involved. And maybe, he'll wind up being, I feel like what we're getting him lined up for is to be the ruler of Drum Island, because he has this whole thing where he's like considering leaving because he feels like he basically betrayed his people and that perhaps he should leave them to like rebuild their lives without him interfering or his presence hanging over them after what he did. And then he's like, that isn't the right way to handle this, though. That's like kind of, it's kind of trying to sidestep it while justifying to myself and rationalizing why I'm actually doing the right and selfless thing when in fact it might be a cowardly thing, which I think is 100% true. But we do get an interesting story of him seeing Vivi for the first time when she was a kid. And this, guys, is one of those moments where I'm like, I am certain that Vivi did the right thing in that situation. I trust their judgment on this. But also, this man slapped her for no reason, and that isn't the thing that starts an international incident. It would be how she responds to him doing that would cause an incident. And oh my God, this is just such a fucking microcosm of what women have to deal with, like, in the world. Men can just do whatever, and it's taken for granted that, well, some guys are assholes. So that's the world. And everybody just sort of shrugs and is like, what can you do? But then a woman decides to stand up for herself in any way, and it's suddenly looked at as like, I can't believe that she would do that. Why is she making a scene out of this? She can't just like let it go and be reasonable about this. I mean, it really feels like she's just trying to be dramatic and get attention. I just don't have the fucking tolerance anymore, guys. Like, it's so, and I know that's not what's trying to be done here, but it's still the truth of how things work. And even as somebody who knows that this is like a toxic way for the system to function, I have still found myself in the position of not wanting to make a scene when I have every right to make a scene, because I don't want the inevitable social blowback that you get even when you're in the right, and it's treated as saint-like if you do let it go. It's treated as if you are somehow like a much bigger, better person and really worthy of respect if you don't demand to be treated well. And I really want to know what the deal is with her dad not deciding to start some shit over this, like, guy, you're not protecting your kid. Like, it's no wonder this man is wound up being overthrown. Like, yeah, you know what, dude? Get some more backbone and start some shit. People should have just gone in and assassinated Walpole way long ago, and that's that. I just, really. It's wild to me, too, that, like, We have seen what a garbage person Walpole is already plenty. But this scene is the thing that really cemented for me that he's just a piece of shit. Like, there was something about him. Just, he's slapping a little girl, and the little girl hadn't even said a word to him. It's just because of who she is. And the fact that he's able to just walk away and get away from it. It's just really, you know, Florian says, I think the dad never saw it, but he knows it happened. Other people saw it, you know, it's just like, it's fine. I'm sure that she did. Like I said, when you work in this sort of setting and you're dealing with like diplomacy and whatnot, to a degree, eating shit is part of the job description, right? Like, that's just part of how it goes, which is part of why I never wanted to work in something like this before. But it is just so frustrating to watch because I feel like, man, you couldn't have done anything. No, he probably couldn't, but ugh. And you know, like I said, this is what like lodges in Dalton's mind, is how this little girl was able to keep in mind the bigger picture in the midst of this very insulting violence. And he thinks that that is a really remarkable thing for a little kid to have the presence of mind to not absolutely throw down, which she would not have been able to do shit to this man. But nevertheless, it would have been very funny. And I can understand Dalton's thoughts on that. I can see why he's just impressed. I am sort of like, are they trying to set up a weird low-key romance between him and Vivi? Because, like I said, I think Dalton is still going to be part of the story. And maybe that's going to be how he... I don't know. But I was sort of... It's a weird thing that happens a lot where it shouldn't be as normal as it is. Because when you stop and think about it, it's really creepy. But there are so many romances out there that the first time they meet, the man is like grown and the girl is still a child. And it still goes on to be a romance, you know, and eventually. But I'm just like, it wouldn't be unheard of. I just don't really want that. But also, he's a responsible, decent dude. I mean, maybe it's not the worst thing. Gus says, nah. Okay, good. It's just the first thing you said, I think. Okay. Florian says, I hope not. Lol. But yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? How often that's a thing. It's just really like wild. So the reason that Dalton even finds out, by the way, that Luffy is wanted is because this random dude rolls into town. I really loved how this was all done. And he tells the people in town, first of all, asks if they have seen this kid with a straw hat. They say no. And he says, all right, well, if you see him, give him a message for me. And he's got this weird sort of look to him. I mean, everybody does. He tells them, tell him I'll wait for him in Alabasta for just 10 days. And he's wearing a hat that has a sort of evil smiley face and then a very distressed frowny face. And around his neck is a sort of like amulet with a little skull and horns, almost like the skull of like a cow or bull or something. And the guy also has freckles, and it looks like he has black hair, and he's wearing this like long trench coat. And as he's walking away, they say, hey, what's your name? And he says, I forgot. My name is Ace. And he's got a toothpick in his mouth. If you tell him that when he comes, he'll know who I am. And all of this is done in this very tough guy, badass, mysterious sort of energy. And then this guy comes running out and says, hey, catch him. He just ate and skipped on the bill. And he panics and sprints off. And I swear to God, I live for moments like this where somebody really, they've almost nailed being extremely mysterious and impressive. And then it just gets pulled out from under them completely. That shit cracks me up. And I just was super not expecting it here, you know? So it caught me very, very much by surprise. Because, I mean, if there is any genre in which people are allowed to be mysterious badasses who just saunter in and out, it's fucking anime. I mean, that's like their bread and butter. So I 100% was not expecting that to be undercut in any way. And I fell out laughing. It was just so unexpected. Royce says, one of the most fun character designs in the series, in this maybe a little thirsty girl's opinion. LOL. LOL. I'm interested. I mean, I am always gratified when there are like sexy male characters, because I'm so used to the women always being the sexy ones. And there's usually like one guy who's, and I mean this not just in anime, obviously, because I haven't watched that much of it, but just in media in general, there's often like a dude who is the guy that is supposed to be the handsome one and like often doesn't do anything for a lot of the women I know, or people who like men that I know. And then there is just this bevy of gorgeous women and a bunch of extremely ordinary looking dudes. And it's just kind of like, all right. But it's always nice when we get yet another hot dude added into the picture. So Florian says, who do you think Ace is or what he wants from Luffy? I have no idea. I'm trying to think if he's somebody that we saw in like our introductory scenes from when Luffy was a kid, when he first gets the straw hat from Shanks. I don't remember there being, because this kid looks like he's a kid. Like he looks like he should be around Luffy's age, maybe a little bit older. It's hard to tell, of course, the way people are animated, how old they're really supposed to be. But there's a very young vibe to him. And so if we saw him in a memory, I would be expecting him to be a kid alongside Luffy. Slightly older kid, maybe. But so I don't remember anybody like that. And that might just be my faulty memory, or it might be that it really wasn't there. And otherwise, Ace doesn't mean anything to me that I can think of. He's got black hair, like Luffy does. And I'm wondering, are they related? Is he a cousin? Is he a brother? Like, we don't know anything about where Luffy comes from. This, I keep having to go back to this. We don't know shit. We know who Shanks is, and that Luffy admired him, and that Shanks gave Luffy his hat, and then sailed away into the sunset. We did check in with Shanks that like one time, ways back. Otherwise, who are Luffy's parents? Why was he alone in a bar? Why apparently was it extremely normal for him to be in the bar by himself? No idea. And overall, like, anything could go. You could say anything and we'd just be like, yeah, all right, that makes sense, I guess, you know. Roy says there's definitely a difference between sexy guy characters made by people not attracted to men versus the ones made by people who find guys hot. Such a big difference. Such a big difference. It is wild. That said, there can still be extreme missteps. I'm going to go off topic really quick, guys. I know that there are a lot of problems with Sex and the City, the original series. They've done the reboot. I have not watched it. I'm not against it, but I do kind of wonder what the hell they're thinking. But the first seasons of that show, all of the male love interests and or sex interests were extremely gay looking to me. Even as a young girl watching it, I was just always like, this guy, I don't know, I get a gay vibe off him. And I found out later that it was like gay writers and casting directors and whatnot. And so I think that they were like going for a type that they liked, but it was not hitting for me as a straight cis woman at all. And there was a definite like disconnect there, despite the fact that we were both attracted to men. But nevertheless, it is more reliable. I mean, it's just funny to me sometimes when you talk to guys and the things that they think women find attractive. I keep saying guys and women. The people who are attracted to men, what people who aren't attracted to men think those people find attractive. Of course, tastes vary wildly. But for the most part, especially straight cis men are so off base with what straight cis women are into that it's almost funny, you know, just like, wow, you really have no idea. There have been so many celebrities that I've mentioned I had a crush on to Owen that he has been just straight up mystified by. And I was mystified that he was mystified, you know? Because, you know, Owen likes people who are not like super conventionally seen as extreme sex symbols, but I can still be like, oh no, but I see it though, you know? Sigourney Weaver being his like number one. She is like his girl. And I get it. You know, it's just, there's a thing. There's an ineffable thing that some people have. Gus says, did you know the title is actually Sex in the City and not Sex in the City? Yeah. I knew, because whenever you watch the opening of that show, you see the title. So I might sound like I'm saying Sex in the City, but I am not. I'm saying Sex in the City. But anyway, all right. So back to this. This dude saunters off into the sunset, like I said. Saunters off into the snow, really. And then we have Dalton. And guys, again, another moment of just like laughing because I can't help it. Dalton is sitting on the beach, or no, they're sitting on like the edge of a cliff, looking down at the town. And Dr. Kureha is saying, my reindeer went with an extraordinary guy. So the will of D was still alive. And I was just like, all right, I'm going to keep it to myself. Stop it. I'm not trying to be a 10-year-old girl, but I am a little bit. But yeah, so that's sort of where things wrap up with Dalton and what's going on there. So now I'm going to back up again, and we are going to talk about the situation with Nami trying to get out from Dr. Kureha's care. It is a really fun bit, actually, that I thought was like, so she essentially asks Dalton for the key to the armory because she wants the cannons. And I found this so funny, guys. She asks Dalton where the keys to the armory are. And he asks why she needs them. And she says, I don't think that's any of your business, do you? I don't think it's any of your business where the keys to the armory are, bitch, but here we are. What are you talking about? And yeah, eventually Nami pulls out the key and is like, oh, this? And I really appreciated this being brought back up again because I had just been thinking about it. I was growing to like Kureha, and then I started to remember the way that she fucking extorted that family in town. And I was like, oh, actually, though, she can be kind of a scumbag. And once we have her up against Nami, we find out that she was planning on taking absolutely every scrap of anything that they had on their ship as payment. Money, property, everything. And thank God that Nami was able to foresee that this was going to be an issue because she prepped herself. I don't know that she was aware exactly what Kureha was going to be after and it was just a happy coincidence, or if she heard Kureha be like, where are the keys? And then was like, hold on a sec, I'm going to go run an errand real quick, and went and grabbed them. But either way, she strikes a deal. She tries to strike a deal that Dr. Kureha will not only waive her fees, but also allow Nami to leave, discharge her, as she puts it. And Kureha takes the key and is like, the only part of this that I'm agreeing to is waiving my fee. And Nami starts to get very indignant and is like, wait a second, though, then I don't want to, then this deal isn't on. And Kureha says, I don't know if you've noticed, but I haven't locked the door. I haven't chained you down. And my coat is in the closet over there. And I'm probably going to be gone for the next half hour. But don't you even think about leaving. And it's a really good little bit. And she leaves and Nami turns to Vivi and is like, did she just tell me to steal her coat and then sneak out with Sanchi? And Vivi is like, I think she did. So, yeah, it's a good little bit of business, which I always enjoy. We have the convincing of Chopper, which I've already talked about pretty much eventually, that Luffy just manages to get him to realize, like, I think the fact that you are a reindeer just is super irrelevant. I mean, it's not actually irrelevant because of the fact that we find out later Luffy doesn't know about Chopper's skills. He genuinely just wants Chopper with them because he's a cool talking reindeer. So, you know, it is relevant, but it isn't relevant in the way that Chopper believes it to be. It's working for him rather than against him, which I don't think that he was expecting. I love when he says, too, I have antlers and hooves, don't you get it? And then says, I even have a blue nose. And I was just like, literally nobody cares. I mean, of course, his fellow reindeer cared because they were monsters. They were the monsters, Chopper. They were the monsters. But in this crew, I mean, the blue nose really is very much a secondary thing to the fact that you can stand on two legs and walk around and talk to people and practice medicine. It's fine. And he tries to say to Luffy, like, thanks for asking me. I do appreciate the offer, but this is the only place I've ever lived and I have to stay. And as he's in the middle of his sentence, Luffy just yells, shut up. Let's go. Listen, guys. There are some very good-hearted, wonderful people out there with whom you must deal in this manner. I have a couple friends like this, where if you try and have just a conversation with rational arguments to convince them of something, it will go on all goddamn day long. Like, it will just, some of my friends, I just have to be like, yeah, but shut the fuck up. No, but really, shut the fuck up. Nobody cares. This is what's happening. Because they just don't want to do what's good for themselves. They don't want to believe that somebody else could be kind to them for the sake of it. And it's tragic. It's truly awful. So you just wind up having to sort of like bulldoze past the barriers that they have put up. And I'm in a text chain right now. And I don't think Cam listens to this show, but even if she does, I think that she would totally understand why I'm telling this story. I'm in a text chain with all of the co-hosts from the network. And somebody shared a TikTok video advising you to cut yourself some slack and give yourself a big hug. And Cam is like arguing about how she can't give herself a hug. First, she's like, because my boobs are too big. And somebody was like, well, then hug your boobs. Those are part of you. And Cam was like, well, then I'm just creeping on myself. And somebody else responded with, can you stop making up fake reasons why you can't show yourself love, trying to pretend that those things are jokes when actually it's just you deflecting from caring for yourself? And there was like no response from Cam for a minute. And I was just like, wow, they just came out and just said it. I think that was Bitches that said that. And I was like, there it goes. But yeah, sometimes there are people you got to handle like that. It's fine. Roy says, sometimes you got to have someone to tell you off for your anxious BS. Yep. Bernadette says, you are the same when it comes to telling you need to take breaks. Here's the thing, Bernadette. I acknowledge that I need to take the breaks, but nobody wants to acknowledge my concerns about how nobody else can do what I do and help me out with certain things. Everybody wants to just skate past the things that actually worry me about taking breaks and act like it's not a big deal. And then I come back from a break more stressed because there's a fucking huge to-do list now that I'm way behind on because I am the only one who does any of the things. So it's just frustrating because people just want me to take breaks without any sort of consideration for the way that has to happen. And sometimes it's just, there isn't a way to do that right now, you know, without it being worse for me down the road. It's hard to relax and actually rest when you're watching things pile up and mount in front of your face that you know you're going to have to deal with in a couple days. That's not restful. So it's not effective, you know, it's just difficult. Gus says, I posted a question, by the way. Thank you. It's at the bottom here. Any theories about the part where we learned Gold Roger was actually named Gold D Roger, just like Monkey D Luffy? Oh my God. I forgot about this because that was what they were talking about. That was Dalton and Kureha on the cliff, right? And she's just like, oh, have you heard about Gold Roger? I think she says Gold Roger and he says, do you mean Gold D Roger? And she's like, oh, is that what he goes by now? I wonder if that's like, I mean, I'm wondering if it's going to turn out that Luffy is related. This is one of those things. It's like the Rey being a Palpatine, spoilers. I don't necessarily want people to be related because I don't want everything to be like, oh, you're part of a bloodline and a dynasty that inherently makes you more adventurous and interested in doing wild shit. However, it's not like that isn't effective sometimes. That can work. And I'm wondering about Ace and like, is Ace Goldie Roger? Like there's a sort of hint that keeps going around as if Gold Roger is still alive somehow. And we saw people who watched his execution. So maybe he ate a devil fruit that means that you can get your head chopped off and then still be fine. That's the only thing I can think of. Like, but that's it. Bernadette says, did the world end because you took 2 weeks off? No, it didn't, because I planned for those 2 weeks for 2.5 years, Bernadette. This is what I'm trying to explain to people. That was planned way in advance versus, oh, just take a week off this week. What? No, I have 7 scheduled episodes that people paid for already. Where do I put those? Onto other days so that I have extra long days next week? Oh, that sounds great. That sounds much better than just doing them spaced out. Like that kind of, you know what I'm saying? Let's trust me. Everybody tries to act like I'm being stubborn, but that's not it. I would love to take the breaks. It's just not something that's always possible to do. It's fine. All right. So then we have the whole thing where Chopper gets chased out of the castle and he makes his grand escape on the sleigh. And then Kureha has her guys firing these cannons into the air, and everybody can hear them, but they can't like tell what's happening because there's snow falling and it's dark. And what it turns out is going on is that the quack doctor who wanted to make all of the cherry blossom trees bloom again created a chemical, a powder that was sort of like, it has a reaction with the snow so that the snow turns pink and falls around you as if it were cherry blossoms. It just takes on the appearance of cherry blossoms. So the snow turns pink, but the cherry blossoms are not actually blooming. And it's just a weird thing here, because I guess the celebration is meant to be, you can find a way to get a version of what you want, and it might not look like what you expected or intended, but it's good enough. And I suppose, but what I'm getting from this is that they fired all that powder and now that's it, right? And like all of this pink snow is going to fall. And then once the powder has like left the air because it's been used up, we'll go back to white snow, and this will never have it will be like this had never happened. And my impression of like the point of what he wanted with getting the cherry blossom trees to bloom again, I thought it was like reviving the fertility of the land. Does that make sense? So I thought that this was like a symbolic sort of thing, because this place is so covered in snow, that he was hoping to create an area of the island where it was like a haven and a sort of little oasis from the freezing snow and ice and cold. And so simply turning the snow pink, for me, just doesn't mean anything. It's a shame, because I wanted this moment to like matter more, but for me, I was just like, this isn't, and unfortunately we get another, like, we're going to draw this out painfully moment where Chopper is seeing all of this, and there's like a moment where the camera pulls back, so to speak, and you see that like really tall pillar that the castle is on, topped with this huge pink cloud that makes it look as if that in itself is a cherry tree. And so Chopper just begins openly weeping, and that goes on for just such a long time. So long. And again, I wanted this to hit for me, but it didn't at all. I felt like either I misunderstood something from the beginning, or I was trying to get the wrong message out of it all. Roy says, could be wrong, it's been a while, but what the quack was after was the visual of cherry blossoms and the inspiring look it provides, the hope it can give. Why does it give hope? I don't understand how that does that. Just turning snow pink, I mean, it's pretty, but it doesn't, like, there's no material change. It's not like, I'm not trying to be a dick. I don't really understand what he thinks this is accomplishing then. Bernadette says, no, you're right, Roy. It's symbolic to heal the hearts of the people. Yeah, I'm not seeing how that it would be the case. Gus says, the sight of cherry blossoms, unquote, is what supposedly cured him. And that's what he wanted to show people. I mean, just a bunch of fluttery pink stuff isn't the same as the sight of cherry blossoms. Like, maybe I'm just being too like pedantic about it. It will go back to white snow eventually. My headcanon is that they'll have a day where they shoot off cherry blossom powder like fireworks to celebrate their freedom from Walpole and stuff. That would be cool. I was under the impression that the quack doctor died and took the recipe for this powder with him, but maybe I'm mistaken. Oh no, wait. He gives it to Kureha. I thought that he gave Kureha the powder itself, but he probably gave her the recipe for it, right? Florian says it was meant to heal the hearts of people, show them beauty and bring them hope, even if it's just a moment. He wanted to heal an illness like depression and loneliness. It shows even on a winterland, in a wintry land, there can be spring. But it's not. Like, this is what I mean. You know, being like, oh, we're going to show that even in this winter land, we can just make the snow look like it's spring, but it's actually still ice cold and accomplishing the same thing that snow always does. That feels like fake to me. Roy says cherry blossoms are a cultural thing in Japan, has a significance that they don't really have in other places. It's almost like leaves turning bright colors in fall, but for spring. Yeah, and I'm aware of that. I mean, the cherry blossom festivals and whatnot are like a massive... I mean, even in fucking Animal Crossing, there's like a whole month almost that there are cherry blossom trees in game. But it just feels so tenuous to me that it's meaningless. And I guess this is why I can just be difficult, because if I saw pink snow falling, I would genuinely be like, what, okay. I mean, fine. You know, I would just be kind of mystified by it. When people have just been ruled over by an absolute maniac, I feel like this is not anything that's helpful to an oppressed people, you know? I don't know. Roy says, for the record, I understand your bafflement. It's totally okay for it to not work for you. It's very symbolic without a lot else to it. Yeah, I just, you know, I don't want to be a dick, but it just felt like I had a very clear interpretation of the symbolism of wanting these trees to blossom, literally the trees to blossom, that I thought was very clear, you know, and I understood what the show was trying to do in that respect, where the winter was meant to be a symbol of the illness of this country, and that him managing to make this one area fertile and blooming again would be representative symbolically of beginning to heal this problem. And instead, it's just a pure, very fleeting fake out, essentially. Which is just super not what I was thinking of. So it just falls very flat for me, especially since it's so temporary. I just wish that, you know, build a greenhouse and put some cherry trees in there, man. Boom. Done. But anyway, so like I said, we get a lot of Chopper weeping. Do you guys remember when I first started covering this show and there's a dude crying? And I was like, oh, it's nice that they show guys crying, because sometimes they're afraid to do that in media. And I cannot get over how incredibly unprepared I was for the sheer number of times everybody cries on this show. It is just at the drop of a hat. Everybody is like just weeping. So, all right, jumping into the end of the next episode, because I don't have that much time left. We have the explanation of the Baroque Club. What are they called? Baroque Works. And we have, first at the top, there's a boss, Crocodile, also known as Mr. Zero, 12 agents, and 1 animal who receive orders from the boss directly. 12 agents and 1 animal. And I love how Vivi is explaining all of this, and she prefaces it with like, I know it seems complex, but it's actually really simple. But then once she starts explaining it, I was like, I feel like this actually is pretty complicated, Vivi. I mean, I get why once you know it, it doesn't feel, but it is kind of weird. Each of the 12 agents operates separately as a pair with a female agent. And yet there are like a couple that don't have partners. So like even that rule, which would simplify things, isn't always true. So we get Mr. One and Miss Doublefinger. Guys, I know that they're all meant to be named after holidays. What is the double finger holiday, because I've got some ideas on what that would mean in my world, but I don't feel like that's probably what is, considered a holiday in Japan. I would like to know. She has a very dominatrix looking outfit in the sort of shadow of her that we see as well, which does not help with the overall impression that I got there. Then we have Mr. 2 doesn't have a partner, and we wind up seeing him later, and he is truly terrifying. Mr. 3 is the candle man who was with Miss Golden Week. And I really kind of wish that we got to see more of her. I liked Miss Golden Week. Mr. 4 is paired up with Miss Merry Christmas, who is a short, stout woman with very curly, wild hair, wearing a Christmas sweater. And I am extremely looking forward to meeting her. They're both pretty big, round people. Then there's Mr. 5, the booger guy, with what's her face, Miss Valentine, who is the Kilo fruit girl. And from Mr. 1 through 5, they're called officer agents, and they all have the powers of a devil fruit, and they work only on really important missions. For Mr. 6 through Mr. 13, their job is fundraising for the company by leading the employees at the entrance to the Grand Line. And come to think of it, there was a strange monkey and chicken, which of course we know that's not what they are. Mr. 13 and Miss Friday, their main job is to punish those who fail missions. Other than these people, there are 200 subordinates called, what are they called? I'm trying to find, because see, she said this was simple. There are 200 subordinates called billions under the officer agents, and 1,800 subordinates called millions under the frontier agents. So once they do the math on all of them, that means that there is 2,000. And it's just quite a bit more of a crew than I was prepared for. That is a lot. I'm just thinking we've got our top 20 guys, and they all sort of get whoever to do whatever they want because they are devil fruit powered and can just sort of bully everyone. But it's a much more organized system than I was expecting, and that is very upsetting. I don't like that at all. So yeah, that's what we're working with here. And like I said, we finally get to meet Mr. 2, who has that swan design ship. And he is I had said that he was dressed like a ballerina, in the first time that we saw him. And there are certainly aspects of that, which I think is part of the reasoning for the swan motif. And he has the ankle wrap shoes and everything, but I thought he was wearing a tutu, and instead he's wearing this sort of puffy pair of shorts that you would see on a gentleman from the Tudor period, Elizabethan period, perhaps earlier even. And he's not wearing any hose with it, I should mention. It is very obvious, the leg hair and everything. And he has a bunch of makeup on, really intense blue eyeshadow. I hesitate to even use the word shadow. It's like paint. And he has these epaulettes that are swan heads that come off of each of his shoulders, along with wings, I should mention. And this guy is very violent. And obviously just kind of a lunatic. So yeah, I found him extremely scary, honestly. He has an energy to him that I feel is what Buggy the Clown wished he was putting out there. But this guy, it's just a lot more unhinged feeling. So Roy says, oh, Mr. 2, size and trans. Yeah, I kept thinking about the coding here. Like, because it feels like we're like trying to be like, oh, see how this guy who is dressed in a very like feminine way is still really scary. But then there's an aspect of like, but is it supposed to be that the fact that he's dressed feminine is what's scary, which is the part that gets real icky? Because you can have the thing where it's like a feminine thing is surprisingly intimidating when you don't think of it that way normally. For example, Roose Bolton having the color pink as his like house color, and yet Roose Bolton is one of the scariest people in Westeros, you know, like that works because it's not about his personal like look. It's just a color, but this just feels a lot more like suspect. Roy says, don't want to get into it now, but Mr. 2 is a bag of problematic queer tropes. Yeah, Roy says another day, maybe. Fair. Yeah, that's fine. If you feel like you want to email me because it's too much to like get into the chat about too, that's also fine. But I just wanted to mention that we met him. I'm out of time. I'm like way over time, actually. Gus says, Mr. 2 Bon Curry doesn't have a partner because he's considered both male and female. Bon Curry is some series of festival days in Japan, I think. Oh, so his name is Mr. 2 Bon Curry. So he's like got the names that would normally be the names of both the male and female partners, but he has both names? Wild. Okay. Florian says, we'll talk about it. Keep in mind, it's like 20 years old. Keeping it in mind. This is the kind of thing where, well, you know what? I'm not even going to like start on that right now because it's a whole thing, but I definitely do want to talk about it. And I'm sure we'll have a lot more to say. So I'm wrapping up, but I really appreciate you, Bernadette, for commissioning this. I can't believe, guys, we're almost into 2022. Holy shit. So, thank you all for being here and feeding me information as usual. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.